Hey, welcome back. It is Chris Nichols here with Petapixel. Jordan and I are on vacation together with our families. We're in beautiful British Columbia, coming to you from Lake Shuswap, and that's because we have an exciting early look at brand new pre-production Sony a7C-R and a7C II. Okay, Jordan, I want you to imagine that you own the original Sony a7C. How do you feel?
I don't like it. I don't like the tunnel vision viewfinder and the twin dials both on my thumb. I'd be sad.
Okay, so what do? You throw in a pit, you donate to your
Tire Fire.
Tire Fire. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You're forgetting about KH.com.
Of course.
Yes, they're a preferred pre-owned trade-in partner. I mean, they do a great job. So first off, you would take it there. You know their experts are going to evaluate it properly. They're going to give you a fair price. You're going to get paid quickly. But also, do you know that KH is an authorized Sony dealer?
What?
Yeah, they sell new gear. You could get the Sony a7C II, which we're just about to learn about. 10% trade-in bonus if you do that on anything that's new or new to you. So where do they need to go?
KH.com, that's where I'm going.
Now we're going to be combining these two cameras together into one review because, again, remember, it's an early look. There's only so much we can talk about, but also the Sony a7C-R and the Sony a7C II are basically identical body designs. They share a lot of similarities, so we'll be talking about that together, and then we'll talk about the differences between the two models. And how we're going to do this is this. I'm going to have the Sony a7C-R right now to start the video, which means Jordan, as you can see, is shooting on the Sony a7C II, and then we're going to swap halfway through, so you're going to be able to see video samples on both cameras, and we'll talk about the features on both. So these two cameras are very interesting development because now we've got a full line of Sony a7C series cameras, right? I mean, the original Sony a7C was always intended to be just a very compact, full frame entry-level package. I mean, it's pretty basic, terrible EVF, but otherwise it was nice. It was easy to carry around. It did have good image quality, decent autofocusing, but now we've got a very different dynamic because we got the a7C II, which actually borrows heavily from the a7 IV, and then we have the Sony a7C-R, which is a silly name, which borrows heavily from the Sony a7 R5. I think I did it.
You did it.
So these cameras really now represent this interesting amalgamation of a still very entry-level, compact, easy to travel with body with some very entry-level features. We're going to talk about that, but also with some very advanced features way beyond what the Sony a7C original had. So the first thing I'm going to point out is both of these cameras have the new Bionz XR processing unit, and this is the same thing that you're going to find in cameras like the Sony a7R5, a very advanced camera. So that means first off that the autofocusing algorithms here are going to be very similar to the Sony a7R5. It's got that same kind of powerful processor, the same kind of AI control unit to help with subject detection. That's a big step up in terms of autofocus for what is supposed to be a more approachable entry-level camera system. So before we get into specifics, let's talk about how this has improved over the a7C original as far as handling goes. These are still very compact bodies. I mean, I love this design. So basically a little bit larger than a Sony a6700 APS-C series camera. That's pretty great. They do have a big change though over the original a7C. It's got a bigger grip and it feels really nice there. As well, if I want it, I have this option for an accessory grip on the bottom. Now, if you buy the a7C-R, you get this. If you get the a7C II, you'll have to buy this in addition. But it's really nice. It's really not that big. It's not a vertical grip in any way. It just gives you a place for your pinky to rest. At the same time, when it's locked in place, you still have a 1/4 inch screw thread on the bottom for tripod work, and you can still access the battery. Look, you can flick this open, that opens up, flick that open, and there's our Z-type battery. I really do love how compact these things are, and they're very lightweight, 513 grams, basically a 1/4 of a knock. That's so lightweight to carry around. We've got really nice changes to control structure. Huge one, now a front control dial. This is really big because before you just had the rear control dial and the back control dial. You basically have to do double duty with your thumb and it really slows things way down. This now handles a lot more like an a7 IV or a7R5 kind of camera. I like that. On the back, we still don't have an autofocusing joystick, but with real-time tracking on these cameras, I don't find that it's as critical. It's still really easy to implement focus and get focus lock. Of course, I can use the touchscreen to do that as well. We still just have one single SD card slot. It is now a UHS 2 card slot, which is nice, but we just have the one. That's what we expected. And we do have the same kind of weather sealing, so you've got nice ports. Everything is sealed up nice. Now, as usual, we have our on-off toggle switch under the shutter button, but what we now have different from the original a7C is a dedicated lever here like we see in another Sony cameras, which goes between photo mode, video mode, and slow and quick mode. So I want to talk about displays next, but I gotta be honest, when I saw that these new cameras had 2.36 million EVFs, I was like, oh, me, I don't want to deal with the original A7C viewfinder because frankly, it was absolute garbage. It was just the worst. So luckily we do have brand new EVFs here. Yes, it's still only 2.36 million dots. More importantly, the magnification is much higher. So it doesn't look like you're looking down a horror movie hallway to your composition there. So that's a huge improvement. Sadly, what hasn't really improved that much is the back panel. So this is just over a million dots, doesn't have a lot of detail. At least you can boost the brightness in sunny weather, so it's fairly viewable. It's a fully articulating touchscreen, but still Sony hasn't decided to implement the A7R5's very advanced, fully articulating screen with a tilt function. I'd really like to see that on another camera. Guess we're gonna have to keep waiting. Okay, so I want to talk about the IBIS unit on these bodies. They do have the exact same IBIS unit. It's nice that it's still so compact for this body design, but it now gives you 7 stops of in-body image stabilization. However, it's important to mention though that that's Sync IS. That's if you've got lenses that also have image stabilizers in them. Sony hasn't yet given us numbers. We're gonna have to test this on full reviews of what that will be with lenses that aren't image stabilized, which is what we happen to be using today. Regardless, this is in some ways, well, definitely improvement over the original A7C, but also an improvement over the A7 IV. So in the case of the A7C2, you're getting a substantial upgrade. However, in the case of the A7CR, it's not quite as stable as the Sony A7R5 that it's copying.
You did it!
I did do it. Whoa, it's tough. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the changes with the new body. Now let's talk about how this is similar to the Sony A7R5, because really what the A7CR is doing, why did they name it that? Why didn't they call it the A7C2R?
It's so stupid.
It's so stupid. Anyways, okay, so what it borrows from the A7R5 is the same excellent 60 megapixel sensor, which we love. I mean, it's got lots of detail, great dynamic range, low light performance. It takes fantastic high resolution photos. It does have almost the same burst rate, 8 frame per second mechanical, so actually a little bit slower than the 10 frame per second you'd find on the A7R5, but it does get the new multi-shot pixel shift mode, so you can get those 240 megapixel files, compile them all in Sony's Image Edge software, so that's nice that we have that as well. Okay, I should also mention that neither of these cameras actually have fully mechanical shutters, even though they say mechanical shutter in the menu, because what these actually have is electronic first curtain shutters. Now, this is okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. First off, you don't get any rolling shutter, which is a good thing, because on the A7C you actually don't get very good readout speeds on the sensor, so you want to avoid electronic shutter. So EFC, no rolling shutter, also very stable to shoot with. There's no mechanical shutter slap, so that's really nice too. But if you're shooting wide aperture lenses, you know, getting lots of specular highlights, low light situations, that kind of stuff, you'll actually sometimes see that your bokeh looks a little bit different. It looks truncated. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't happen very often, but just keep in mind, neither of these cameras have fully mechanical shutters. Okay, Jordan, that's enough with this A7CR. Give me the A7C2 and all you can use. No, come on, we have to switch it over. Come on. You didn't pre-loosen the quick release plate for me? Come on.
See, that's a red dial.
Yeah, no,
here.
I got it. No, I know how to do it. Okay, so now I've got the Sony A7C2 in my hands, and the first thing I noticed is what I also loved about the A7C. It's just beautiful with this gunmetal top and black. I just think it's one of the sexier Sony bodies. Most of their cameras look very utilitarian, so it's nice to see something with a little bit of flash. I wish we saw that on the A7C as well. Okay, but as I mentioned earlier, this borrows a lot from the A7 IV. So we've got the same 33 megapixel sensor. I love it. You know, it's nice balance between resolution and file size and cost, frankly. This also does have a similar burst rate, 10 frame per second in mechanical shutter mode. So again, it's capable for some quick action in sports. This does though have some big improvements over the A7 IV, and this is a different dynamic than what we see with the A7CR. This actually improves on the A7 IV as far as autofocusing goes. It is more capable, also in terms of the IBIS being upgraded. So it's a little bit more entry-level feeling, but in a lot of ways it's actually a more capable camera. There are still some benefits to the A7 IV though. I mean, as much as this has improved the grip and the control structure, you might still prefer the A7 IV's even deeper grip. The fact that it's got an autofocus joystick controller on the back is really nice. The A7 IV does give you a better 3.69 million dot EVF and a better back panel as well. And it does give you that fully mechanical shutter, whereas this only has electronic first curtain.
Hey, it's Jordan here, standing in front of a movie theater to talk about the video capabilities, starting with the A7C II. And honestly, this is almost exactly what we've seen before on the A7 IV, which is a fairly competent camera for video recording, but it still has some of the same limitations. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that AI processor that they're using does bring big benefits for video autofocus. It's just much more sticky than what we saw before with the A7 IV. However, those same limitations that we've seen are still there because this uses the same sensors. So that means if you want to record 4K 60, you are going to have to go to a Super 35 crop, and rolling shutter is quite bad at your 4K oversampled record modes. You can mitigate that by going to Super 35, but then you're sacrificing some low light performance. Now, because these are pre-production cameras, I'm not doing a full evaluation on autofocus performance and especially overheating. That's something I'm going to do once we get production cameras. Now, the A7 IV controlled that quite well, but this is a much smaller body, so time will tell. So now Chris has switched over to the A7CR, and looking at the specs, this looks like a really powerful video camera, but this sensor is just not that well optimized for it. It's the same issue that we had with the Sigma FPL, which was a video-centric camera using this sensor, and this thing's almost as small, so there's no reason to ever look at that camera again. Anyways, the limitations to this is the sensor reads out quite slowly, so it gives them a couple of options. If we're using the 4K 24 and 30 frames per second, there it is binning to create the image. And even if you don't select Super 35 shooting and jump over to 4K 60, it does require you to have a crop with this binned footage. As well, this is missing the 8K recording that we saw on the A7R5, although that did have a crop and the rolling shutter was really bad, so I didn't recommend using it that much. So if you're looking for really good oversampled footage, I really recommend shooting in the Super 35 mode that we've switched over to now. There you're going to get very detailed image quality, but unfortunately, rolling shutter is still pretty extreme on this, even though it is a crop, so there's real downsides to this in all of its modes. And again, we haven't been able to test overheating with this yet. If you're looking for a real hybrid photo video camera, I'd still probably lean towards the A7C II.
So, the Sony A7C line of cameras has gotten far more interesting now with these two new cameras, because the original A7C was really like a bare bones, affordable compact camera system for full frame, and it really did feel like it was very entry level with very basic equipment and poor controls, terrible EVF. So these two new cameras now really are quite interesting because they bring a lot to the table, even versus the cameras that they're kind of building off of. I mean, let's talk about the A7C II first. So compared to the A7 IV, to me, this is actually really compelling because it has some substantial benefits in technology with the autofocus and the IBIS, and I do really like the more compact camera system, and I don't feel that the control structure is really lacking that much compared to the A7 IV. I'm also going to save some money, so I think this becomes a really compelling piece. I would probably get this over the A7 IV. Now, we do have a different dynamic when it comes to the Sony A7CR, which I can't hold right now because Jordan is still shooting on it. Where the A7C II basically gave you more capabilities than the A7 IV, the A7CR doesn't, I almost said two there, doesn't really bring anything new to the table against the Sony A7R5. In fact, it has a slightly less effective IBIS unit, and it does actually shoot a little bit slower. So there might still be absolute reason to go for the A7R5, even though it's more expensive, because you want maximum capabilities in that platform. But this is still a very, I don't even have it. Jordan, can I have the camera? No. This is still a very compelling product if you're looking for something that's more compact, still has a lot of the same controls, has the same great image quality and autofocus, and is substantially less money. I could absolutely see this as being like a backup camera to your A7R5, or if you just prefer a smaller body, you're not giving up that much to go with the A7CR. I just wish it had a better name. All right, well, thank you for joining us on our little preview here of the brand new A7C series cameras. Also, remember that the new 1635 G Master video has just been released at the same time as well, so definitely check that out too. We'd really appreciate that. Check out the socials. Do listen to our podcast as well. You can get that on all your favorite podcasting apps. Just search for the Petapixel Podcast or watch it right here on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, leave comments below. Let us know what you think about these new products. Click the notification bell, do all that fun stuff, and that way you won't miss us when we see you next time for new episodes on Petapixel.